Hello and welcome back to Star Goblin Radio. This video was inspired by a question I received on another one where the person had asked, why in a world that has laser guns and spaceships do the people of the Algol system still bother to use swords? My initial response to this question was, because it's cool. But that's not a very satisfying answer. So I did some digging, found some explanations, and today we're going to answer that question. Before we jump in, I do have to give a shout out to the PS Cave community. pscave.com, as well as their Discord server where their community hangs out, have been a huge help to this channel pretty much from the get-go. The website's a treasure trove of Phantasy Star Lore. And a special shout out to Arawen from the PS Cave community, who's not only the most knowledgeable person about Phantasy Star Lore I've been able to come across, but has also been super generous with their information and providing me sources to hunt down some of these answers. And with that, let's answer this riddle. From a design perspective, it's pretty easy to understand how we landed in a world with swords and shields and rocket ships, which is that Phantasy Star was designed as a direct competitor to Dragon Quest. In the 1980s, when these games came out, RPGs, especially for home consoles, were pretty much unheard of. Dragon Quest was the first RPG for the home consoles that really broke through to an audience, and Sega wanted to take a crack at it. Whatever they did, they wanted it to be unique and distinct and to stand apart from Dragon Quest, and so the design team was given a lot of freedom with their creativity. This resulted in the science fiction elements of Phantasy Star, which, especially during the 8 and 16-bit era, was very unique for a JRPG. It's also easy to see some of the Star Wars inspiration that propelled Phantasy Star, and Star Wars has laser swords, and the rest is history. From the release of the first game to 1993, when the fourth title released, we saw thousands of years pass within the Algol system. We look at the several millennia that the Phantasy Star timeline occurs over. This second half of that timeline is pretty obvious as to why medieval weaponry is so prevalent, which is that the first half tells the story of the rise and fall of civilization, and Phantasy Star 3 and 4 tell the story of a post-apocalyptic society. Phantasy Star 3 shows us a bunch of refugees flying through space for 1,000 years trying to keep their civilization going, and also forgetting their history and their technology while they do so until they revert to a medieval society. They no longer have the knowledge or the means of mass production to create firearms in the same quantity that they would have before leaving the Algol system. And the people in Phantasy Star 4, while they seem to have kept better records of their history, we're also dealing with the collapse of their planet's ecosystem and the failure of the technology that had terraformed it. So while the people of the Algol system had knowledge of this greater technology from before the fall of civilization, they still lacked the means of mass production. And firearms require ammunition. Without a means of creating that ammunition, even the existing supply of weaponry would have diminished over time as ammunition would have become increasingly more scarce. This explanation addresses the second half of the timeline, but that's the easy part. What about the first half of the timeline? That 1,000 years from Phantasy Star 1 to Phantasy Star 2, where technological growth doesn't slow down until the destruction of Mother Brain and the planet Palma. As Earthlings, it's easy to look at this advanced civilization and then look at our own and sort of shrug as we phased out swords and armor because firearm technology vastly outgrew them and made them suboptimal if you wanted to survive a fight. But in the Algol system, they didn't abandon armor, or if they did, they brought it back due to advancements in its capability. Imagine how different our own history of warfare would be if we had invented Kevlar before we had invented the musket. During Phantasy Star, we see that laser shields are usable by just about anybody to defend themselves, even those who aren't martial combatants like the Wizard Lutes. I've shared a link in the description of this video to some concept art that was shared to X by Judy Totoya, one of the character designers for Phantasy Star 2, also the designer of Tails from Sonic the Hedgehog. We can see that the teleport service girl wears shoulder pads that have an electromagnetic shield. With these advancements in armor and shields, it makes sense that some weapons are more effective against them than others. We see this in other science fiction like Dune, where characters have personal shields that stop fast-moving projectiles and require swords or knives to pass through. or E.E. Doc Smith's Lensman, where the Space Marines have to use axes in order to get through their opponent's deflector shields. The most resilient metal in Phantasy Star is Laconia. The strongest weapon and armors are made from this metal, and it's incredibly strong, incredibly rare, and very light on top of that. It can only be mined from the planet Dezolis. Because of its usefulness and its rarity, it's also extremely expensive, and so you probably wouldn't be able to find a Laconian firearm. Something like that, shooting Laconian bullets, would be pretty expensive and wasteful use of Laconia. And then if you made a energy weapon with it, it'd be the energy firing from a Laconian gun and be no more effective than a regular one. Laconia isn't just metal either, it's got some sort of holy property to it. And this holy property allows it to stand up against demons like Dark Force, or to wound him in a way that other metals can't. The people of the Algol system were created by the Great Light, an entity that opposes Dark Force and the Profound Darkness. These people were tasked with keeping Dark Force sealed away. Over time, this mission was forgotten by almost everyone within the Algol system, but it's entirely possible that the reliance on these old medieval weapons is a cultural one, stemming from bits and pieces of forgotten lore, as people would need to rely on these Laconian arms to deal with Dark Force, such as the Blade Alcidian and most of the Nay weapons. These melee weapons, and even some range weapons that are more primitive than a firearm, aren't limited to just swinging and throwing. As we see in Phantasy Star 4, characters also have skills. These skills you or I might call supernatural abilities, like Chaz using Ray Blade to blast light from his sword at an enemy, or Air Slash, which, in addition to striking the victim, creates a vacuum that suffocates them. In the right hands, a sword can be more deadly than a firearm. And even those without weapons don't necessarily need them to be deadly. There's magic and later on techniques, which can be used to devastating effect. While firearms are still useful in Phantasy Star, their advantage isn't as cut and dry as it is in real life. Bringing a knife to a gunfight isn't as crazy as it might sound. And finally, Phantasy Star 1 and 2 take place during a time where space travel is fairly common. Firearms on board of one of these vessels are incredibly dangerous. One missed shot could breach your hull, turning everybody on board into ground beef. And those are all the reasons I could find that the people of the Algol system would continue to use swords, shields, and other archaic means of warfare over various forms of firearms. Hopefully you found that insightful, and if you have any ideas that I didn't cover, let me know in the comments. And that's it. That's the show, so until next time, thanks for watching.